Ladies and gentlemen, how are you? Great. So I'm really excited to be here today, and I want to give a very special thank you to Rabbi Goldstein and the rest of the staff. This is unbelievable. Let's hear it up for them. You know, my kids say, Dad, why would you fly across the world to go speak to a room full of people you've never met for 1 hour? You're going to be in a plane for 32 hours trying to sleep in a chair? You're going to do that to speak to strangers you've never met for an hour? And you know what I told them? Guys, I would fly 5 times as far to speak to just one of you for 5 minutes. That's how important this is to me. Thank you. You know, I was 6 years old, and I love to do what all 6-year-olds love to do. I love to draw. I used to draw on everything. I used to draw on the walls with my mother's lipstick. Don't try that at home. I have a twin sister. I used to draw on her forehead with markers. Of course, I used the permanent markers so it would stay. She didn't like that. And I love to draw. I said to my mom, Mom, you should put Rena on the fridge with the rest of my artwork. Yeah, my sister wasn't happy. But I wanted to be an artist. And then I was 11 years old. 11 years old, I see a movie that changes my life. I see the movie E.T. And I'm watching the screen and I say, Mom, that is what I want to do. She's like, what, you want to leave planet Earth in a spaceship? And I said, no, Mom, I want to make movies. See, I grew up in New York. I didn't know how to make movies. I didn't know anybody that was in the film business. All I knew is that was something that I wanted to do. I wanted to make movies. I just had one problem. I had no idea how to do it. So I went to the library, and I got books on filmmaking, camera lenses, storyboarding. I found out the director of E.T. is a Jewish guy named Steven Spielberg. I thought if he could do it, he's a Jew, why can't I? I also found out that on weekends, he would get his friends and kids in the neighborhood together. He would make movies, little movies with a Super 8 camera. So I went out and bought a camera, and I got my sister, my older brother. We got together, we started making movies, monster movies. We made fake blood, ketchup for explosions, whatever we could do. I tied my sister up to a tree for one of those movies. We went inside to watch the movie after. My mom's like, where's your sister? I said, she's still tied to the tree. What's wrong with that? Why do you think it's so quiet in here? So I wanted to be a director. And then I get to high school and someone says, Saul, what are you going to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to be a director. They said, well, you don't want to do that. Because if you want to be a director, you're going to have to move out to Hollywood. And Hollywood is filled with weirdos. You don't want to be a weirdo, do you? And I looked at them and I said, no, I don't want to be a weirdo. And I'm telling you guys, I gave up on my dream right there because one person said to me I would end up a weirdo. By the way, today, I live in Hollywood, and my 4 kids would tell you, Daddy is a weirdo. So much for that. But I gave up on my dream. Instead, I said, I'm going to be an artist. My parents got an art teacher to come to the house. She started teaching me watercolor, painting. She would set up a bowl of fruit, always drawing from life. She would have me draw my hand from different positions every day. I was always drawing from life. Then I go to the movies, and I see another movie that changes my life. I see The Little Mermaid. You guys seen that movie? I'm watching that movie, and I say to my mom, Mom, that's what I want to do. She's like, what, you want to fall in love with a fish? I'm like, no, Mom, I want to work in animation. Because you know what animation is? It's my great passions, my love of filmmaking, my love of drawing. You put them together, animation. And plus, Disney has a studio in Orlando, Florida. I don't have to go out to LA to become a weirdo. So now I know exactly what I want to do. Saul wants to be a Disney animator. I got my goal. I just had one problem. I had no idea how to do it. But you know what I did have? The most supportive mom in history. She takes me on an airplane down from New York to Orlando. She's walking me around Disney World, going over to everybody at Disney. My son wants to be a Disney animator. Can you help him? My son, they're like, lady, do you want to get on the Small World boat ride or not? On or off, lady? She's embarrassing me all day. Finally, one guy says, look, lady, if you want your son to work at Disney, he's got to go to the Disney casting building. It's 4 minutes from here. Here are the directions. We pull up to the Disney casting building. Here it is. Unbelievable building. The doorknobs of that building were shaped from bronze, like the ones from Alice in Wonderland, the ones that talk. I open up the doorknob, I walk in, there's gold statuettes of Mickey, Minnie, Pluto, Donald, they're all there. I walk up this ramp, unbelievable, like where am I? What kind of office building is this? Walt Disney's painted on there with a sketchbook. How will I ever get here? I look to the ceiling, Peter Pan is painted with Wendy and John up there. Finally, they call my name, it's my turn. I'm sitting in the interview, she says, what are you doing here? I said, well, I want to be a Disney animator. She says, Saul, we don't hire that here. This is just for people that want to work in the theme parks. She says, but maybe this will help you. She opens up her desk and takes out a piece of paper. I'm holding that piece of paper. To this day, it's the most valuable piece of paper I ever held in my hands, other than my wedding ketubah. You know what was on that piece of paper? A list of 8 schools, 8 art schools that Disney recruits from. It was the answer key, how to achieve what I want in life. You know, I meet students all the time. I say, what do you want to do when you grow up? And they tell me. I say, how are you going to do it? They say, well, I don't know. Then guess what? It's not going to happen. You go to an unbelievable restaurant. You taste a great dessert. You want to make it at home? Well, you can do it if you have the recipe. Well, that piece of paper was the recipe. Now I knew where to go to school. And my mom took me on a tour to all these different art schools. I'm going through art school after art school, trying to figure out which one I'm going to go to. And all I'm thinking is one thing. Who am I going to hang out with in art school? Do you have any idea how strange they are in art school? I'm talking like black lipstick, piercings, eyelashes. These are the guys, okay? Like strange, like strange. I'm like, who am I gonna hang out with? I remember walking into one school in Columbus, Ohio, the Columbus College of Art and Design. I'm looking at the walls of this school, and it's the most unbelievable artwork I've ever seen. The guy's touring us around, and I tell him, your seniors are so talented. He says to me, Saul, that's not our seniors. That's our freshman class. I looked at that work and I said, every one of those pieces of paintings and artwork is 100 times better than anything I could ever do. And they're only a year older than me. You know how I felt at that moment? Intimidated. Why would I choose to go to a school where I would be the worst one in the school? You know, Michael Jordan is in the NBA the first year. First year, he's Michael Jordan. A critic comes up to him after a game and says, Michael, you have no defensive game. You know what Michael could have said to the guy? Dude, you're probably wearing my Air Jordan sneakers. You probably have my Michael Jordan posters on the wall. I'm going to listen to one critic? But Michael thinks in his head, you know what? Something I'm doing is giving that critic the impression that I don't have a defensive game. I guess I better work harder on defense. And that's what he did. Next year, one player in the NBA is named Defensive Player of the Year. Number 23, Michael Jordan. Because if we want greatness, we need to know what we do well, but we also need to know where we need to work on ourselves. And at that moment, standing in the lobby of that school, I said, if I'm going to go to a school like this, it's going to get me better. And I chose the school. And thank God they chose me. The first day I walk into my room, I have a roommate. I walk in there, over his bed, he's not in the room, but over his bed is a life-size sculpture of Jesus on the cross. That was his high school art project he made out of paper mache. I was the only Jew in my school. I'm like, how am I going to deal? The guy had a shaved head, a big blonde mop of hair that went over one eye. I never saw that other eye. He was like the Phantom of the Opera, you know? The guy had these red leather boots that went up to here with like 100 rungs for laces, but he wouldn't put the laces in because laces means conformity, right? He wouldn't conform, so when he'd walk down the hall, you'd hear those things clopping a mile away. I walk down a little bit more to another room. I'm looking around, see who I'm going to hang out with, who am I going to be friends with. I see in one guy's room, he's got Mickey Mouse slippers. I'm like, what kind of university student has Mickey Mouse slippers? Then I notice he's got the Mickey Mouse bedspread. He's got the Mickey Mouse telephone, the Mickey Mouse clock. He has every Disney movie poster on the wall. It was Disney World in a room. He's not around, and I see in the corner, he's got sketchbooks. So I pick up the sketchbooks, and I'm looking through his artwork. I want to see if he's good. And you know what's in the sketchbook? All drawings of Mickey Mouse. Tons of drawings of Mickey Mouse. Scared Mickey, sad Mickey, sports playing Mickey. I never drew Mickey before in my life. I was intimidated. Then I see another sketchbook. It says hands and feet. I'm like, oh, let's see how well he draws hands. That's one of the things my art teacher used to draw with me. I pick it up, I open it, and there's the Mickey Mouse hand, the 4-finger white glove from like 100 different positions. I'm like, this guy's Mickey crazy. I turn to leave the guy's room, and I bump into the guy whose room it is. Uh-oh, I'm busted. I go, hey man, I'm sorry. He says, how you doing? I'm like, I'm okay, what's your name? He says, my name's Jason, but people call me Mickey Mouse Jason. I'm like, they call you what? He goes, Mickey Mouse. I'm like, I heard you. You have a Disney nickname? He's like, what, you don't? I'm like, no, I don't. I ran back to my dorm room, intimidated. I get on the phone with my mom. She's like, calm down, honey, calm down. 2 weeks later, I'm sitting in an auditorium this size, 350 students are there, every freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior. And in walks the representative from the Walt Disney Company. The guy gets up on a stage and he says, how many of you want to work at Disney? Every single hand went up. He said, maybe 4 of you will ever work there. That's how competitive it is. He says, if you want to work there, you got to get the internship. No internship, no Disney. And if you want the internship, you have to have a portfolio of 25 pages of figure drawing and anatomy. All drawings done from life. We don't want to see any drawings of Mickey Mouse. I was like, oh yeah, Mickey Mouse, Jason. That's right. You could see him like slumping his chair. Oh boy, you know. But the answer key was in my hand. The guy from Disney just said, if you want to work at Disney, here's what you need. I always think of goals as an equation. Here we are, plus what will equal our dream. As soon as we find out how to do it, we can do it. So Disney said figure drawing, and that's what I did. I went to figure drawing the next day. I'm sitting in figure drawing class, got my pencil sharpened, drawing board here, 50 students in a circle. The model walks in, we're getting ready to draw. The model gets in a pose in the middle, holding it like this. I'm about to draw. The professor says, hold on, before you draw, I want you guys to just look at the model. So we're looking at the model, and 5 minutes go by. That's a long time to stare at someone not moving when you're supposed to be drawing them. It's a little awkward. Finally, he says, okay, you ready to draw? We're like, yeah. He says, okay, model, before they draw, I want you to take your stuff and go. She's like, sir, I'm supposed to be paid for the 4-hour session? He's like, don't worry, we'll pay you for the whole thing. I want you to take your stuff, you can go, we'll see you tomorrow. She walks right out. We're sitting there. I raise my hand. He's like, yeah, is there a problem? I'm like, yeah, the model's gone. He's like, what'd you do? I gave you 5 minutes. I gave you 5 minutes to look. Did you see? Did you look? Did you see the way she was sitting with her, standing with her balance of her back leg? Did you see the gesture? He said to us that day, you got to look at the gesture of the pose, see it, figure it out. You don't even need the model anymore. You got it in your head. That was figure drawing. I also remember the first week at school, everyone's going out partying and having fun. I went out to one party, and there's a guy there with a sketchbook, and he's drawing. I went up to him. I said, what's your name? He says, my name's Andy. I said, what are you drawing? What class is that for? He's like, I'm just drawing because I want to get better. He became my best friend. You know why? Because who we choose to hang out with in life actually affects who we become. It actually affects who we become. I became a better artist just hanging out with this guy because he was the best artist I had ever seen. And the guy was focused. The guy was disciplined, and he was a good guy. So Andy and I were inseparable, drawing all the time. We'd go play basketball together. And when we were sitting out, we would draw the ball players. The sophomore year came, I sent my portfolio to Disney, and I waited. Now, I didn't really expect to get in because I was just a sophomore, but I send the portfolio in, and I wait. A month goes by. I get a letter on Disney stationery. I open it up. Whoa, my name is written on there with the Mickey Mouse logo. I read it. It says, Saul, thanks for sending in a portfolio, but unfortunately, you didn't get it. I wasn't even discouraged, guys. I was like, you know what? I didn't really expect to get in anyway. I love that my name was printed on Disney stationery. I went and put it up over my desk. That was going to inspire me for the next year. And the next year, I drew all the time. I went to the zoo. When you guys see a movie like Lion King, how do you think those animators learn how to draw animals? They spend 100 hours at the zoo. I drew elephants, tigers. I'd get anatomy books on elephants to see how the trunk moves. I got that portfolio together, and so did Andy, and we sent it in. And this time, a month goes by, I can't sleep, but I know. Because everyone in the school knows at this point, Saul and Andy, these guys are getting in, because these guys never put their sketchbook down. And I go back home to New York. It was a holiday break. I remember sitting there at home. Every time the phone rings, I'm like, ugh. Finally, it's Andy on the phone. I'm like, hey, man, what's up? He says, did you hear? I'm like, no, did you? He's like, yeah. I said, what'd you hear? He says, I got it. I said, you got it? Congratulations. That's amazing. He goes, but you didn't hear? I'm like, no, I didn't hear, but they could be trying to call me right now. I got to hang up. We didn't have call waiting back then. So I hang up the phone. I'm pacing in the dining room. My mom comes in at that moment. She's like, honey, did you hear? I'm like, no, Mom, any minute. And then all of a sudden it hits me, wait a minute. My last name begins with the letter B. His last name begins with the letter H. Shouldn't it be alphabetical? Shouldn't they have called me first? I can't stand it. I get on the phone, I call up the head of Disney myself. I'm like, hi, this is Saul Blinkoff. I wanted to find out about the internship. Oh, Saul, I have your name on the list here. I'm like, yeah, and? He goes, yeah, you didn't make it. I was like, what? He says, yeah, you didn't make it. I said, well, what about Andy? He said, oh, yeah, he made it. You didn't. I said, oh, thanks. Hang up the phone. My mom walks in at that moment. She could see it on my face. Do you know where my best friend was going? You know what Disney calls Disney World? They call it the happiest place on earth. Maybe think about that. Everyone wants to be happy. But if you want to be happiest on planet Earth, the only place you can do that is in Disney World. Always sunny, sunshine, Disney World. And that's where Andy's going, to the happiest place on Earth. You know where I'm going? To the most depressing place on Earth. Columbus, Ohio in wintertime. See, you guys don't know winter. You think it's cold out, don't you? No, that's not winter. I'm talking bitter cold. Scarves, earmuffs, freezing cold. I'm going back there. And you know what else I have waiting for me at school? I get to walk the halls and have everybody come up to me and say, oh, Saul, I'm so sorry you didn't get in. Oh, you didn't get in? Oh, I feel so bad. Hey, what are you doing here? I thought you were going, oh, you didn't make, oh, I had a week of that. And after a week of that, I gave up on my dreams. Second time in my life. I gave up on the whole thing. I thought, you know what, just because I want to work at Disney doesn't mean I'm just going to be able to do it. I knew Andy was talented. I just wasn't at that level. And I gave up on my dream. Then a buddy calls me up and says, Saul, I got tickets to go see a movie. You want to go? And I said, I'm really not in the mood. He said, Saul, they're free tickets. See, someone offers you free in university, you take it. So I go to the movies, and I'm watching this movie, and at the end of the movie, tears are streaming down my face. This movie is based on a true story. It's about a guy who's 5 feet tall. He doesn't have an ounce of athletic ability, and he wants to play football at Notre Dame. What movie is it? Rudy, yeah. That's the movie poster from Rudy. True story. I love the tagline on that poster. It says, when people say dreams don't come true, tell them about Rudy. The guy is 5 feet tall. He's not an athlete. If you were friends with Rudy, you know what you would have said to him? Dude, you got to get a new dream. You're not living in reality. But you know what Rudy said? Oh, yeah? Well, we'll just see about that. And he tries to get in. And you know what happens? Rejected. He tries again the second year. And you know what happens then? Rejected. And then he tries again. And you know what happens that time? Rejected 3 times. And before he's about to give up, he says one more shot. He tries and he gets in. Gets into Notre Dame. I'm watching the movie. And I'm like, if an untalented athlete can get in, then an untalented artist can get in. And I will not stop. I called up Disney the next day. I got the guy from the internship on the phone. I said, let me ask you a question. How close was I? He said, Saul, we picked 17 from thousands around the world. You made it to number 20. I missed it by 3. And I was going to give up on the whole thing by 3. You know how many times in life we could be so close to achieving something and we want to give up? All we got to do is push a little bit more. Then I asked him another question. I said, well, why didn't I get in? He said, Saul, instead of being figure drawing class all the time and drawing from the same perspective, why don't you get up and move around and give us something dynamic? Give us something with perspective or foreshortening. You know, looking down at the model or looking up at the model. I'm like, thank you. That's the answer key. We want to grow, we always have to add to the answer key. What can I do better? And surround ourselves with mentors. I go to figure drawing class the next day. They have a wood box almost this high. I move the thing into the middle of the room. I stand up on a chair. I stand up on the box. My head is 20 feet up in the air. I'm looking down at the model drawing. She's looking up at me like I am nuts. And I'm just drawing. I remember some guys in the back of the room. They were making fun of me. Hey, look at Blinkoff standing up on the thing. Did I care what they thought? No. Because the guy at Disney told me this is what I need to do in my portfolio. And I was focused. At the end of class that day, my professor brought me over and he said, Saul, let me ask you a question. I see how much you want this. But let me ask you, can you control whether Disney says yes or no? I said no. He says, can you control how good any other artist is? I said, sadly, no. So he looked at me and said, so what can you control? So I thought about it. I said, well, I can control how good I am as an artist. He says, no, you can't. He says, you think Michael Jordan can control that he could become the greatest NBA ball player in history? No. He controlled one thing. He took 450 jump shots every single day before breakfast. My professor looked at me and said, Saul, the only thing you can control in your life is how hard you work. That's it. The only thing we can control in our lives is the investment that we make into something. The outcome, that's not up to us. He told me this line. He said, write this down, Saul. So I wrote it down. It said, nobody worked harder today than me. He said, if you can't say that and it's true, you don't go to bed. Nobody worked harder today than me. I wrote it down. I put it up over my desk. I went back to figure drawing class every day. I went back to my dorm room. I remember looking at all the pictures I had drawn throughout my university. All my favorite artwork. I ripped every one of them off the wall. Instead, I put up drawings from Michelangelo, Leonardo. I called up Andy at Disney. I'm like, hey man, send me some artwork. I started wallpapering my room with work that was better than me. We want to grow. We need a vision of what we're trying to aspire to become. I got that portfolio together. And this time, Beauty and the Beast was just nominated for a Best Picture Oscar. It got so competitive, you weren't even allowed to send a portfolio to Disney anymore. Disney would send a representative from the studio to come to your school, and if he liked your work, he would send it to Florida for another round of review. So in I walked. And of course, that day it was alphabetical. He started with me. Calls me in there, and I remember he had this big white beard. His name was Bill Matthews. Had to be 75 years old. He was one of the original animators on Sleeping Beauty. He calls me in there. He's looking at my portfolio. I'm terrified. And as he's looking through my portfolio, he says, "Saul, my boy." That's how he talked. He was the coolest guy. He said, "Saul, my boy, I like your drawings. I'd like to send your portfolio to Florida for further review. Would you like that?" I'm like, "Would I? Yeah, I would like that." I take my portfolio and I hand it to him. And as I hand it to him, I'm clutched on the end of it. And I start to become in a tug of war with a 75-year-old man. He's like, "Saul, my boy, what are you doing?" I'm clutching it. I'm yanking it out of his hands. It's a true story. I said, "Bill, let me ask you a question. Where are you going from here?" He says, "Well, I'm going to that art school, then I'm going to that art school." I said, "So when do you actually need it in Florida?" He's like, "Well, not for 2.5 weeks. Why?" I said, "Because any drawing I do tomorrow has to be better than every single drawing that's in this portfolio. And if I have 2 more weeks, I could do better work." He said, "No problem." You know, I felt at that moment, for the first time in my life, somebody liked my drawings other than my mom. I was elated. I turned to leave the room and I said, "Bill, let me ask you another question." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "You look at a lot of art from a lot of students around the country." He's like, "Yeah." I said, "Any advice how I can make my drawings better?" He said, "So why don't you put some effects in your portfolio?" I said, "What's that?" So when you guys watch a movie like The Lion King and it's raining, fire, water, smoke, that's a division of animators called effects animators. He said, "You should put drawings like that in your portfolio." I said, "Thank you, man." Answer key. I went back to my dorm room. I took my portfolio. I put it under my bed. I said, "It doesn't exist. Can I actually create a new portfolio in 2 weeks?" And that's exactly what I did. I set up a pot with water. I set the faucet up so the ripples are going in, the drops, and I'm watching the ripples, and I'm doing drawings. I did drawings of a flame on a candle, watching the way that flame dances. I did drawings and drawings. And I got a whole new portfolio together, and I sent it to Bill. You know why? Because I wanted him to open up a portfolio and see drawings he's never seen before. I wanted him to know how hard I worked. So I sent it to him, and I wait. And a month goes by. 2 months go by. I can't sleep at night. I'm on the phone with my mom. "Mom, I got it." She's like, "Honey, you're going to get in." I'm like, "Mom, you have to say that. You're my mom." And then finally, I get a call. And it's Andy on the phone. I'm like, "Hey, man, what's up?" He says, "Saul, they built a brand new wing on the animation studio for the next interns. It's beautiful." He said, "You deserve to be there." I said, "Thanks, man." He said, "You know what else they put up?" I said, "What?" He says, "They put up a piece of paper with a list of the next interns." I'm like, "Yeah," and he goes, "You're on the list." I was like, "What?" He goes, "You're on the list. Thank you." I was ecstatic. I said, "Thank you, man." I hang up the phone. I go over to my tape player. You guys don't know what tapes are. They plays music, whatever. I hit play, and at the top of my lungs, it's the circle of life, and it moves us all. I'm singing. People are leaning out the halls. Oh, Blinkoff must have got in. I get on the phone with my mom. She could hear it in my voice. She's like, "Honey, did you do it?" I'm like, "No, Mom, we did it." She's like, "What do you mean we did it?" I said, "Mom, don't you remember years ago? You embarrassed me all day at Disney World, taking me around, asking everyone. You took me to this art school. You took me to that art school. You're on the phone with me all the time. I can't sleep. Mom, we did it." But guess what? I'm the one that's going to the happiest place on earth. And I fly to Orlando, Florida. I remember landing at the airport. They had one of the guys with the signs, you know those people with the signs? But this one had Mickey Mouse pointing to it. The guy drives me to the Disney studios. It says artist entrance. The sun was glinting. It was like beautiful. I remember walking into this room, a huge animation desk. And on the top of that desk is a name, Saul Blinkoff, Jewish kid from New York who had no connections, who was not talented. If you guys remember one thing I said today, I hope you remember one thing. And I mean this so sincerely. I'm telling you, as I rated as an artist, I was not talented. But man, nobody worked harder than me. That's how I did it. And that was just the beginning. Now it started all over again because I had 15 other artists that were all 100 times better than me from around the world. I'm on the internship, and we find out we're going to be the first interns to work on a movie. They told us we're going to be the interns that are going to work on the movie. Oh, that's me on the internship. There's me with some of the other artists. There's me at my animation desk. and we found out we're going to work on the movie Pocahontas. Remember that movie? Pocahontas. So excited to work on that movie. Very intense scene they asked me to animate. If you guys remember the movie, Pocahontas is in the forest at night. She's talking to John Smith. Meanwhile, Kocoum is the Native American guy she's supposed to marry. Well, he finds out she's talking to another guy. Well, he doesn't like that very much. It's a very dramatic scene. He walks through the forest at night, and there's these leaves and vines. He's peeking through there, watching her talk to this other guy, and they asked me to animate the leaves and the vines. That's it. And you know what? That was fine with me because I was terrified. You do a drawing of a leaf on your paper, it's this big. On a movie screen, it's a 50-foot leaf. It better be a good leaf. I took a Xerox of those leaf drawings. I sent it home to my mom. She tells everyone, my son, he draws leaves at Disney. She's so proud. She takes that drawing, puts it on the fridge with my sister, who's still hanging there. Pocahontas was an unbelievable experience. After that, I got to work on The Hunchback of Notre Dame. You remember that movie? At this point, my life is like in full gear. I get an apartment, I get a sports car, they send me a paycheck. They're paying me money to actually do what I love. I went to Abercrombie & Fitch. I'm pulling everything. I'll take this, I'll take this. My life is going perfect. Everything I ever could have wanted. During The Hunchback of Notre Dame, my mom says to me, honey, do you have any vacation time coming up? I'm like, yeah. She's like, why don't you come to Israel with me and your dad? Ah, Israel. You knew something Jewish was going to weave its way into this talk, didn't you? I hope you weren't thinking, this is the how do you become a Disney animator talk. So just to give you a little background about me Jewishly, I grew up in a very amazing home. My parents love Israel, love Yahadut and Judaism. My mom lit candles Friday night, and Shabbat was a big deal. We were, I guess you would call it conservative, traditional, whatever label you like. My parents said, go to Israel. I'm like, oh, it sounds like a good time, let's go. So I go to Israel, and I'm in the old city of Jerusalem. Raise your hand if you've been to the old city of Jerusalem. Let me just see. Oh, wow, that's awesome. Okay, raise your hand, no guilt. Who has not been to the old city of Jerusalem? I want honest people. Okay, those of you with your hands up, you gotta go. People, they have to go, right? You gotta go, you gotta go. So I'm walking through the old city of Jerusalem, and I walk into a bagel place called Bonkers Bagels. Remember that one? Old school, it's not there anymore. So I walk into Bonkers, and I'm from New York, so I know how to order a bagel. And I ordered the everything bagel, cream cheese, lox, capers, tomatoes, you know, red onions, Swiss cheese, whatever. I want it all in there. The Dagwood sandwich. I tell the Israeli guy what to make. While he's making my bagel, in walks this guy. He's 23 years old, my age. He's wearing a baseball hat. We start talking about sports, like a normal guy. I said, what are you doing here? He says, I'm in a yeshiva program. I'm like, you don't look like a yeshiva guy. Don't you have to have like the payas and the tzitzis out? You don't have that look. And this is what he said. He said, Saul, I'm here because I want to find out how I fit into the Jewish people. I said, what do you mean fit in? What are you, a puzzle piece? I don't get it. And he said to me, I was raised a certain way because my parents decided how I was going to be raised. My parents decided what Hebrew school I was going to go to, what I ate in the house, what I ate out of the house. My parents decided everything about me Jewishly, but now as a man, I want to find out what it means to me. And he had passion in his eyes. And when he said that to me, I was envious of the guy. I said in my head, I wish I could do something like that, but I can't. I got my dream job at Disney. All of a sudden, the guy behind the counter told me my bagel was ready. I forgot all about this guy. I'm looking at that bagel, and this is just a little side note of how they do bagels in Israel. The Israeli guy takes my bagel, puts it on this waffle iron, and goes, tss. Everything slips out of it on this wax paper. It's a huge mess. It's disgusting. I look at the guy, and I'm like, man, look what happened to my bagel. He looks at me with a serious face and says, so what do you want me to do? And I'm like, hey man, you don't have to do anything. I love the flattened bagel. Who doesn't love the flattened bagel? He was in the army, see? He eat what he makes. That's how it goes, right? So after my bagel experience, I go back to Disney, start working on a movie called Mulan. Remember that one? And on Mulan, I got to animate Shang. He's saying, let's get down to business. Remember? Those of you who don't know Mulan, it's about a girl who dresses up like a guy to go into the army so her aging father doesn't have to. That's kind of like Yentl in China, right? And I'll give you one little behind the scenes about Mulan. On that movie, you know, at Disney, we always have to act out the scenes that we're animating in the movie, right? So there's a scene where a friend of mine is animating Mulan, and it's a scene where she's in the army, and she's got this big pole, and she's flipping it around, and these other guys come over, and they want to mess her up. So they take a big black scorpion and put it down her shirt, and as she's going like this, they're trying to mess her up like that so she'll hit everything. Well, my buddy was animating that scene, and he couldn't figure out the acting. And at Disney, we always have to act out the scenes we're animating. They say Glenn Keane used to run through the studio when he was animating the Beast and Beauty and the Beast. He would run with a cape just to see how it settled. Walt Disney would bring animals, deer, into the studio when they were making Bambi, always drawing from life. We all have mirrors on our desk, so we can see facial expressions as we're animating the different characters. So my friend calls me into the room, and I'm trying to figure out the acting to help him out. We can't get it right. I'm like, hold on a second, I got an idea. I go into the kitchen. I get a big hunk of ice. I'm like, dude, get your camera, get it ready. I take the ice, I put it down my back, and I'm like, whoa. So when you watch the movie, it's not little Asian Mulan, it's a tall Jew from New York with ice down his back. After Mulan, worked on that for 3 years, we found out the next movie we're gonna work on, this one. Son of man, look to the sky. I have to sing the songs. I love the singing of the songs. We're gonna work on Tarzan, but there's one problem. They're not ready for us to work on Tarzan yet. You know why? It takes 4.5 years to make a Disney movie. The whole first year, you're writing the script and the story. After that, you have to deal with the character design and the environment. Then there's the animation. Then there's the color. Then there's the effects. Then there's the music and the post-production. 4.5 years. 1 million drawings go into a hand-drawn animated movie. 1 million drawings. It cost $190 million to make an animated movie. Insane amount of work. Well, for Tarzan, they were still figuring out the script, and they didn't have anything for the animators to do. So we would come into work every day with nothing to do. It's called downtime, and it's awesome. If anyone ever offers you a job with downtime, you take the job. Because downtime turned into a month, 2 months, 3 months. You know what downtime is at Disney World? You're riding the roller coasters every day. It's Splash Mountain, Thunder Mountain, Space Mountain, woo, me and my friends every day. Disney has 15 hotels. 15 hotels, each themed different things. There's a wilderness hotel, the Grand Floridian. Me and my friends would go to a different hotel every week and just go to another swimming pool. I remember going to this one hotel, the Disney Beach Club Hotel. They have a current swimming pool in the back, and you're kind of floating on your back. I'm floating on my back in this current swimming pool, pina colada in my hand, all my buddies around me. And I'm telling you guys, the checklist of what I wanted in my life, I had every single thing I ever could have wanted. I had my dream job. I had this unbelievable girlfriend who I later married. I was making a living. I had my best friends. I had the sun all year round. And as I was floating on my back, something was bothering me. Something was missing. And I remembered something. The guy that I met at Bonkers Bagels years earlier. And I told all my friends, guys, I'm going to Israel. They said, what are you going to Israel for? I said, because I just want to find out how I fit into the Jewish people. They're like, what are you, a puzzle piece? So I get on a plane. I go to Israel. I walk into this room, and I meet 2 rabbis, Rabbi David Aaron and Rabbi Benny Friedman. You guys know these guys. Now, Rabbi Aaron spoke here before. Rabbi Benny walks in and he speaks to us for 15 minutes. And what he said in those 15 minutes changed the course of the rest of my life. You see, before that, it was movies that changed me. It was E.T., Little Mermaid, Rudy. Now it's a living, breathing human being. And the rabbi looks at us and he says, how many of you know what a mezuzah is? I'm like, yeah, I know what a mezuzah is, the thing on the doorway. Yeah, I get it. He says, well, what's that for? I said, I don't know. Doesn't it, like, protect your house from evil spirits or something? He said, okay, we'll get to that. He said, what's inside it? I said, there's something inside it? I thought there was like a piece of art that you put on the doorway that has Shin, for Shaddai, God's name. He says, just imagine for a moment that it's true, that there is a God. What if it's true that there is a God? Now, everyone has to struggle with that for themselves and figure it out, but what if it's true that there is a creator of the world? And what if it's also true that that creator actually wrote the Torah, letter by letter? Now, what does that mean? Did he tell Moses what to write? Is the Torah inspired by God, but God doesn't have a hand? He's like, put that all out of your head. What if it's true there's a God? And what if it's true he wrote the Torah? You know what we're commanded to do? We're commanded to take part of that Torah. It's the Shema. The Shema comes from the Torah. Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. We're supposed to take that, put it on a little parchment, roll it up, and put it in a mezuzah. Put it where? On our doorway. If you guys went home today, and there's an envelope, and the return address says the creator of the world, you'd be like, honey, who's playing a joke on me? Come on. You open that up, and all of a sudden, what if that letter starts floating, and it's glowing? You'd be like, honey, I got the letter from God here. I mean, what would you do with it? You'd put a glass jar around it with a red laser security system. You'd take a selfie with the floating God letter, right? I mean, you would have a museum. You'd be rich. You'd have the God letter. Here's what you wouldn't do. You wouldn't say, oh, I know where this is going. This God letter right here on the doorway. Doesn't make sense. And this is what the rabbi said. He said a mezuzah is not a thing that you place on a doorway. It's an opportunity. You see, a doorway is a place of transition. Everyone wakes up in the morning. We're about to walk through a doorway. A mezuzah is there to ask the question, you know what? I'm about to go out into the world. What kind of a world do I want to create? What am I living for? To tap into our purpose. Then he told us a story. He said 500 feet away from where you're sitting in this Crusader-built building, this small room, was a temple. The Jewish people had a temple, and it wasn't just a temple, it was the temple. Every Jew lived right there. And the temple burned. They burned down the temple. If I found out, I grew up in New York, if I found out that Sons of Israel, where I went to synagogue growing up, burned down, you know what I would say to my mom? I'd be like, Mom, is everybody okay? Oh, don't worry, honey. It happened at 3 in the morning. Everyone was fine. No one was there. I said, what about the Torahs? Did they rescue the Torahs? Oh, they're fine. They were in this lead casing in the Aron Kodesh. They're fine too. I'd say, Mom, this is great news. What do you mean it's great news? I told you the temple burned down, but Mom, they're going to find a donor that's going to feel so bad. They're going to give more money. They're going to build it even more beautiful. They're going to bring the Torahs and the people back in. It's going to revive the community. It's going to be awesome. The rabbi looked at us and he said, you don't get it. The Romans weren't telling the Jews, you need to go pray somewhere else. He was telling them, you can't be Jews. He tried to take away their identity. Then he told a true story of a woman in the Holocaust, 21 years old. A woman's talking to the rabbi, and she says to the rabbi, Rabbi, I need a knife. And the rabbi looks into her eyes, and he can tell that she wants to end her life. He says, don't do this. Don't let them win. And as they're speaking, 2 SS guards, 2 Nazis, see them. And they come over like, what are you doing talking? They'll shoot you if you talk out of turn. They'll shoot you anyway. And she looks up to one of them, and with great courage, she says, give me your knife, because she could see he has a knife. He can't believe it. Who is she to talk to me this way? The other soldier says, give her the knife. What's she going to do? We have guns. So they hand her the knife. And she's holding the knife, and she reaches down to her leg and pulls up a bundle of clothing. And she undoes the bundle, and inside the bundle is a brand new newborn baby boy. It's her son. And she holds that razor-sharp knife, and the rabbi can't even look. And she holds that knife in her hands. And she looks up to the heavens, and she says, God, you gave me this beautiful baby boy, and now I'm going to return him to you perfect. And with that, she takes the knife and performs on her son a bris milah, a circumcision that goes back thousands of years to Avram Avinu. Because you know why? He's a Jew. And then she takes her crying son, and I'm a dad, and I have a son, and I don't know how you do this. She takes her crying son and puts him into the hands of the SS guard, and she turns to walk away. The baby's crying. All of a sudden, no more crying baby. She falls to the ground, both murdered. And you hear that story? Imagine the tears over Auschwitz that night. But if you go deep into that story, there's something so profound. You know what Reb Noah Weinberg said? He said, if we don't know what we're willing to die for, then we're not living for anything. If we don't know what we're willing to die for, what are we living for? Each one of us stands on the shoulders of the most unbelievable history any people has ever known. The fact that we are here at this convention right here in South Africa with these unbelievable Torah scholars, if we could go back thousands of years and whisper into the ear of one of those Jews as their temple was burning, don't worry. In the future, the Romans, they're going to be gone, but we're going to be here. We're going to be able to learn Torah, learn Jewish wisdom anytime we want. We're going to have a Jewish state. We can have Shabbos anytime we want. They wouldn't even believe you. And now that we know this, what do we do about it? That's what the rabbi said to me. He said, what are you going to do about it? I said, I don't know. I went the last day, I said to him, I never knew any of this stuff. He says, Saul, it doesn't matter what you know. It matters what you do with what you know. I left Israel. I was inspired, to say the least. I went back to Disney, finished up on Tarzan. Every Friday night, you know what me and my buddies did? Every Friday night, we went to the movies. Because you're in the movie business. And every Friday night, there's a new movie that comes out. So 10 rows back, me and my 8 friends would all see a movie every Friday night. And I'd come back to my apartment, and I'd think to myself, wait a minute, I want to connect to my time in Israel. So you know what I did? I bought a book, the Torah. I opened it up, and I started learning the weekly Torah portion every week. You want to connect to the Jewish people? Doesn't matter what community you go into the entire world. And I've lived in all these amazing places. I've lived in Dublin, Ireland. I've lived in South Korea, Vancouver, Toronto, LA, New York. Every community in the world is learning the same part of the Torah every week. You want to feel connected to the Jewish people? It's all right there in the Torah. Then I said, you know what else? I want to start doing something else. I want to start doing something, not just learning. I remember when I was in Israel, I learned that you say a blessing before you drink water. And I thought, you know, I'm going to take that on. I wasn't ready to step off the plane and start putting on tefillin every day or wearing tzitzis. I wasn't becoming this religious guy. All I knew was I wanted to grow. I said, you know what? I'm going to start saying a blessing over water. Shehakol nihiyeh bidvaro. You know, if you go to a gym, or you go for a run and you're sweating and you're tired, you come home, you open up the fridge, you can't find that water. All of a sudden on the bottom shelf, there's that bottle of water. Oh, it's so good, you drink it. The next day, the same thing happens. You open up the fridge after your run, you see there's a bottle of water on the top shelf, and there's a tag on it. Your husband left it, your wife left it, your mom, your dad, your friend. It says, thought you could use this. Take a drink of the water. What's the difference between this water and the one the day before? You know the difference? This one, it's a gift. There's a relationship. You're having a bad day, you're stuck in traffic, you're about to take a drink of water, stop for a minute and go, whoa, God, thank you for this water. Take a sip. Watch how it changes your day. Then I got a call from my agent. He said, Saul, I have an opportunity for you to become a director, because that was my dream. He said, but it's in New York. You got to go work at MTV. And I did not want to be at MTV in the bitter cold New York. But I chose it. I said, you know what? I want to be a director. I went to New York. I started directing a show called Spy Groove. The year was 2000. There's Spy Groove. I'm in New York. The year is 2000, and I have to find a place to live. I'm walking through the streets of New York, and there's an apartment building. It says the Key West, and it has 2 palm trees for the logo. So I thought, oh, it reminds me of Florida. That's close enough. I walk into the building, and there on the bulletin board on the bottom there, I'm looking. There's no apartments available. A guy walks in and takes a card and puts it right on that bulletin board, looking for a roommate. I said to the guy, dude, you got to get that card off the board. He's like, why? I said, because I'm your new roommate. He's like, well, not so fast. I said, what do you mean? He's like, are you Shomer Shabbos? I said, what's Shomer Shabbos? He says, if you're asking what's Shomer Shabbos, you're not Shomer Shabbos. I said, so what is it? And he said, well, you know, that means, you know, there's the Jewish law about how you keep Shabbos. I'm like, whoa. I'm not a religious fanatic yet. You know, hold on. I said, but what do you have to do? And he started explaining it to me, and I said, hey, that's not me. I walk out into the bitter cold. I'm out there for about a minute. All of a sudden, I turn, I run back into the building, go, hold on, man. I'm going to be Shomer Shabbos. It's a true story. And I tried it out. And you know what happened? I fell in love with Shabbos. How could you not? I'm 20 whatever years old. Every week, a different person's bringing food and potluck meals. You're singing songs and l'chaims. It's beautiful. Meanwhile, my girlfriend in Florida, she hears how inspired I am on the phone, and she calls me up one day and tells me, Rabbi David Aaron and Rabbi Benny Friedman are coming to Florida for a spiritual retreat. It's unbelievable. I just left Florida to go to New York, and those rabbis are coming there, and she's going to get to go have her own experience. She wasn't raised religious at all. She goes there for a Shabbos, has an unbelievable time. The next day, she's on a plane to Israel. And what happens when you think she landed after coming back from Israel? She wanted to grow. If you're a person that has no interest in growing Jewishly, I'll give you a little advice. Don't go to Israel. It has a way with you, you know? So there I am in New York, and then I went to my first religious wedding. If you haven't been to a religious wedding, you gotta go. They're amazing. A year and a half later, I had my own religious wedding. I want to give you a moment from my wedding that still stands out to me. I'm in this room with the guys at the tish. Tish is the Yiddish word for table. My wife-to-be, Marion, is at the bedekin, surrounded by her mom and my mom, her sister, my sister, all her friends. And a week leading up to the wedding, there's a Jewish custom that you don't see each other. It's a beautiful custom. It goes back so long because you want to build anticipation. And so while I'm in there in the tish, all of a sudden someone leans in and says, showtime. And I hear the music. And they'll start dancing me out. And as they dance me out into this huge room, hundreds of people, there's one thing I want to see. I want to see her face. I want to see her face at that moment. And finally, the sea parts. All the guys move to the side, and they're like 2 head beams of light. This girl's looking up at me, and I'm looking at her. She's gorgeous. I felt like we were the only 2 in the room. She's beautiful. And Judaism says the most unbelievable custom here. They dance him over to the woman he's going to marry. You look into her eyes. She's so beautiful. And then you take her veil, and you cover her face. Honey, you're so beautiful. I just can't look. What is that about? You want to understand something in Judaism? You know where you start? What bothers you? You know, we live in a nice Jewish community in LA, Pico Robertson. We have some neighbors that aren't Jewish. I always think every year our non-Jewish neighbors must have the same conversation. I could see one of them getting on the phone. Hey, Marge, what's going on? My Jewish neighbors? Yeah? They're doing that thing again? What thing? The one where they build the homeless shelters? Yeah. Oh my gosh. And the kids, they're doing artwork to put in their homeless shelter. They got the grass roof on top. They're dressing up in nice clothes. They're hosting meals in their homeless shelter. Oh no, they're singing. They're happy they're homeless. What is up with the Jews? But then you go deeper and you know what you find out? Wait a minute. You know what the sukkah represents? When the Jewish people were in the desert in the middle of the day, it's scorching hot. At night, it's bitter cold. The sukkah represents the clouds of glory. The creator of the world sustained the Jewish people for 40 years in the desert. In the middle of the day, at its height of its hotness in the sun, he gave an air condition right around them. At night, when it was cold, a warm air. If you leave your house and you go, you know what, I don't need to live in a house to be secure. I know the creator of the world's got my back. If you could have that reel in your head while you're sitting in a sukkah, how could you not be besimcha? How could you not be happy? So there I am. I'm in my sukkah. I'm thinking about it. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. What is this meaning about my wedding? Why is it that I'd have to cover up my wife-to-be's face? And this is what I heard. Rabbi Benny Friedman says something so unbelievable. He says Jacob, in the Torah, he wants to marry Rachel. The first time he sees her, he loves her, wants to marry her. He knows this is the woman destined to be his wife. So he goes over to her dad and says, I want to marry your daughter. The dad says, no problem. But first, you got to work 7 years for me. He's like, what? He's like, yeah, you got to wait 7 years. Now, if you talk to a single guy, he finds the right girl, he's going to wait 7 years? Probably not. There's a lot of other fishies in the sea. But Jacob says 7 years, no problem. Because you know why? He had clarity that this is the girl for him. Albert Einstein has an unbelievable quote. It says you take your hand and you burn it on a hot stove for a second. Tss, ow. It feels like hours. He says you sit next to the love of your life on a park bench for hours and it goes by like seconds. That's relativity. See, for Jacob, 7 years went by like that because you know what he had? Clarity. And sure enough, he gets married to her. The next morning, he opens up the tent. The sunlight comes in. He looks over. He married the wrong girl. He married Leah, her older sister. You see, the dad did the old switcheroo because the dad said, wait a minute, it's not right that you marry the younger before the older. Really? The switcheroo? If that's what's happening there, then go back to my wedding. If I'm worried that they're going to switch her, then shouldn't I be lifting up the veil, keeping my eyes on her the whole time we go over to the chuppah? But that's not what we do. And this is what the rabbi said. He says, you know why you cover her face? Because first you look into her eyes and you see you're getting Rachel, but you're also getting Leah. We're not human beings, Rabbi David Aaron says. We're human becomings. We grow, we evolve, we change. You look into the eyes of that person and you see who they are now, and you're also committing to who they're going to become. There's so much meaning in Judaism. So we get married. We move out to LA. Now I return to Disney as a director. I start directing a movie, a Winnie the Pooh movie called Winnie the Pooh, Springtime with Rue. I remember my wife and I found a Jewish community, Pico, and I met this unbelievable rabbi. And he said to me, we should start learning together. I said, okay. So we met once a week at his house, Friday night, just him and me. Rabbi Shalom Denbo. Me and Rabbi Denbo are learning, and he starts teaching me the 7 traits of greatness, showing me how Torah wisdom is applicable to my life. He teaches me about the trait of responsibility and teaches me that Jews are responsible, not just for our home, not just for our community, we're responsible for the world. And I think about it. I think about those words and I think, well, you know, I'm a filmmaker, I'm a director, but I'm a Jewish one. How can I add that into my films? So for the Winnie the Pooh movie, I took the drawing of Winnie the Pooh in the 100-acre wood where all the characters live. You know, you got Winnie the Pooh. I think I'll have a smackerel of honey. You know? And you have Tigger. How you doing, Roo boy? And Piglet. Oh, dear. And Eeyore. Thanks for noticing me. And Rabbit. No, Tigger, do it like this, right? And all the characters in the 100-acre wood. And as a director, I have to give a signature on the layout drawing. I have to tell them it's okay. So I give my little signature. Everyone walks out. When they all walk out, I'm thinking to myself, don't Disney artists like hide things in the movies? I'm going to hide something. I sharpened the pencil. I went over to Winnie the Pooh's doorway, and I drew a mezuzah. There it is. Now he's not Winnie the Pooh. He's Winnie the Jew. I drew a mezuzah. Put it in the movie. I'm the director. Who's going to tell me no? Come on. So you know what I did next? Next, I started directing a movie, Kronk's New Groove. It's the sequel to... Oh, hold on. Let me tell you about this first. This is the opening of Winnie the Pooh, Springtime with Roo. If you look by a drawing of Roo's foot, you'll see 3 Hebrew letters, Hey, Shin, Mem. I put Hashem's name right there in the movie. On the drawing, it was this big. On the movie screen, it was huge. It was huge. Nobody at Disney knows about this. I guess they're going to know now. Okay. Then I directed, here we go, see? Kronk's New Groove, the sequel to Emperor's New Groove. I'm reading the script. It says Kronk gets married. I'm like, you know what? Let's give him a chuppah. Let's make him a Jew. I got my wedding album. I give it to the artist. I said, I want you to draw this chuppah just like my wife likes, with the calla lily flowers. And that's what he did. Kronk steps on the glass. Mazel tov. It's in the movie. There it is. And there's proof right there. You know, Kronk was an amazing experience. I love working on that movie. But people always ask me, Saul, how do you balance it all? You know the secret to balancing it all? This is the secret. You can forget everything I just said if you remember this right here. This is my secret. That's my family. That's my oldest daughter, Meira. She's 10. Liel is 8. Asher, 6.5. And little Naomi, 2. And my wife, Marion. And you know what happens every Tuesday night? I'm home for dinner. Wednesday night, I'm home for dinner. But you know what happens? I get a phone call. I get a text. I get an email. Shabbos comes. Friday night, the iPhone off, the iPad off, the iMac off. And my kids know, Daddy's not just home, Daddy's home. And each one of them comes up to me to get a bracha, a blessing. And even little Naomi comes up, Dad, Dad. And I give her a bracha that goes back thousands of years to Yaakov. My Judaism grounds me in everything that I do. In every project that I approach, I'm always thinking, how can I balance it as a Jew? My son, Asher, he loves the show Doc McStuffins. And I had the opportunity to direct the 2nd season of Doc McStuffins, if you know that show. You guys know that one? I got to direct the 2nd season of that. And I'm talking about the script and trying to put Jewish values into what I'm doing. My son also loves to do voiceover. My son, he's 6.5, Asher. He loves voiceover. He goes for an audition for the sequel to the movie Hotel Transylvania. You guys remember Hotel Transylvania? So they're making a sequel. It's coming out this September. And my son's going to go in for an audition. He's about to walk into the audition. He says, Dad, should I take my kippah off? I'm like, son, why would you take your kippah off? You're a Jew. Keep your kippah on. He's like, should I tuck my tzitzis in? I'm like, no, keep them out. You're a Jew. He goes in there, hundreds of kids. And you know what happens? The director cast our son Asher. He's the voice of Dennis, this little redhead kid in the movie coming out this September. Oh, there's his kippah and tzitzis. He's a Jew. Why does he have to just have it in shul? There he is. This is the character he plays. You can go watch the trailer. He's in a scene here with Adam Sandler, Mel Brooks, and there's little Ashi. We balance it. You know, I had an opportunity also to work with Mark Hamill. The first movie I ever saw, I was 7 years old, was Star Wars. 7 years old, Luke Skywalker, the actor who played a Mark Hamill. I'm in a recording session and I'm directing him. I'm terrified. He's the coolest guy. He does a lot of voiceover. So in the break room later, we're eating, we're talking, and he notices the containers that we have Hebrew letters on them. He's like, what's going on with the Hebrew letters? The producer's like, oh, the director's a Jew. He's like, oh, wow, I have all these questions. We started talking about Judaism. There's me and Mark. We're talking about Judaism. I'm telling him about kosher food. We're talking about, he's asking me, he heard about mikvah. He wants to know about that. I'm like, hey, you got to talk to my wife about that. But it comes up all the time. It comes up in so many circumstances. This is a book many of you have seen maybe called Herschel and the Hanukkah Goblins. Me and a couple of my friends in LA were reading this book, and we said, there's nothing Jewish for Hanukkah. We need something good. We need something good like a stop-motion animated Hanukkah movie. So we optioned the rights, and we're developing a movie, Herschel the Hanukkah Goblins. This is some of the character designs that we have. This is some of the characters here. We have the designer from How to Train Your Dragon doing our designs. This is Hannah and Joseph. Look at the rabbi. We're hoping Mel Brooks is going to lend his voice for this character. Yeah, it's exciting. I'll tell you one final thing, guys. You know, it's not easy to figure out how we fit into the Jewish people. It takes a lot of work. The amount of work that I put into figuring out how to become a Disney animator, that's nothing compared to what I put into trying to understand Torah and how to apply it to my life. And I can tell you, you want a life of happiness? That's one thing. You want a life of meaning? That's Torah. And the rabbi that I learned with, Rabbi Shalom Denbo, The 7 Traits to Greatness. He just wrote a book a month ago, and you can all get it. And I told him I was going to come here and I would share it with you. The book just came out. It's on Amazon now. 7 Traits, How to Change Your World. It's an unbelievable book. It's incredible. Guys, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed being here. Thank you.